All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. Live edition of 3 post-game edition of 3 K-State survives by beating Tulane. So we're going to get to all your comments, all of our takes. We're going to embarrass some non-ball knowers who are losing their minds for whatever reason over this offensive pass interference call here at the end of the game. We're going to break it all down next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
All right, John Kurtz, Cole Manbeck with you. We hope to get DY for a little bit later on. That's going to depend. He is live on the scene after driving all the way to New Orleans, which, boy, that, I tell you what, that is when you would need some Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon from our friends at Holiday Distillery, because I did that drive with my buddy Cam, shout out to Cam, a couple of years ago for the Sugar Bowl, and that is a long drive. You'll probably need both the 360 vodka and Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon, which, again, you can get from our friends at Holiday Distillery. Thank you, as always, to them for supporting our pod. I might take a shot as I see that Northern Illinois is now leading at Notre Dame. Love to see that. I've got two screens going right now, watching Iowa State, Iowa, and Baylor, Utah. So, you may get a little bit of reaction from me as we move along with that. But, man, I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. That was a stressful game to watch. Never really felt comfortable. And honestly, I don't know. The reason, look, the offense, there was a lot to be frustrated with offensively, even though they did play better in the second half, much like last week. But, Cole, the reason I never felt comfortable in this game is because the defense was just getting torched by this Darian Mensah kid who he is good. I will give all the kudos in the world to him, man. He made a mistake at the end, but that dude is good. He also had a lot of high school wide open receivers running around there. So there's a lot to be concerned about long-term, especially with Tetero and McMillan coming in next week. But that's the part that really blew me away about this game. If you would have told me K-State's offense was going to be a little bit clunky, I would have said, yeah, that sounds about right. I did not expect the defense to be gashed the way that it was at a lot of points in this game.
I think the offense did about what we expected in the grand scheme of things, right? The offense puts up 27 points. You take away the touchdown, obviously, by the defense, 27 points and 11 drives, just under 2.5 points per drive. I think in our prediction shows, we had right around like a 31 for offense, right, for the final score for K-State. And so in the grand scheme of things, the offense did some nice things, especially in the second half. Now, there were some pull your hair out moments in the first half, which was very clunky, obviously. But the defense, to me, was the story of the game and just how incredibly frustrating it was. I found myself, John, and you weigh in here during the game, finding this to be arguably the most frustrated I've been with a Chris Kleiman coach defense in his entire time at Kansas State. You could go back through the history, obviously Iowa State last year, and think about.
I was going to say there's a game I can remember not that long ago, sitting on this very same couch that I watched against Iowa State. But yes,
but the thing was about that was it's a Big 12 foe, and it's a snow game, and this is Tulane. No disrespect to Tulane, they've knocked off some heavy hitters. Obviously, came to Manhattan, won, beat USC. They were right there with Ole Miss last year. They went to Norman in 2021, and they lost 40-35. So this is a really solid program, and John Summerall is a hell of a coach. But you're going up against a redshirt freshman quarterback, and to just get diced up the way that you did when you're top 15 in the country and returning defensive production this year, and we're talking about it like perhaps this is my fault. I have said repeatedly that I think this secondary is the best in the Big 12. This is a secondary, John, that ranked 14th in pass efficiency defense last year, behind only Oklahoma out of all the teams in last year's Big 12 and currently in this year's Big 12. And they give up 342 yards passing on 29 pass attempts. John, they gave up 11.8 yards per pass. If you go back to the beginning of 2021 season and on, that is the fourth most passing yards by a K-State defense in that time. We're talking about 40 games, okay? Oklahoma State in 2021 had more passing yards. Texas Tech in 2022 had more against K-State in Manhattan, but that was because they dropped back and threw it 50 times in that game because they were losing much of the game. And then Missouri last year in 2023 went just slightly over that total. But if you look at yards per pass, Missouri was at 9.9 yards per pass last season against K-State. This was 11.8. Texas Tech was 7.5 yards per pass in 2022. The only games from a pass defense standpoint that were really worse since 2021, Iowa State, obviously last year, at 19.2 yards per pass. Alabama in the Sugar Bowl at 14.6 yards per pass. Oklahoma in 2019, if you go back that far, at 14.6 yards per pass, a game that K-State did indeed end up winning. And then Tulane. I mean, just the fact that they gave up so many explosive plays. We talked about this defense had to minimize giving up explosives. Last year, K-State ranked 126 in the country in defensive explosiveness out of 134 FBS teams. And then in this game, they give up 9 plays of 20 or more yards and 6 of 30 or more yards. That cannot happen. And it wasn't like them making tremendous plays. These were guys running free, wide open.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I mean, again, Mensa deserves a lot of credit because there were a couple plays. There was like one in particular. Jacob Harris has some great coverage. He threw a really nice ball, like on the outside shoulder on kind of an in cut to the middle of the field. But a lot of it, he was just taking what was there from the defense. He seemed really poised and savvy and just found a way to buy time at a lot of points. Now, there were also K-State's defense they have 5 or 6 sacks, at least 5. So they found a way to get some pressure eventually. But he was really cool, calm, and collected and just took what was there. And it was like, DY made the observation. I know Keenan Garber was still in there playing some in the second half, but Louis Riddick pointed out in the first half, it looked like Keenan Garber twice just passed off the coverage and he kind of went downfield and they just left somebody, whether it was Mario Williams or whoever, wide open over the middle. And then they started the second half and Keenan Garber wasn't in as much. And that's when the defense went through a stretch where they played a lot better. The third quarter obviously was much, much better. So I don't know if but that's not what you would expect. I know Keenan Garber hasn't played defensive back his entire career here at K-State, but he's been in the program for an awful long time. I mean, that's a senior. You wouldn't expect him to be making those sorts of mistakes. So that was pretty alarming. It was pretty jarring.
Well, what it looked like, John, was that they thought they were in a zone, and I don't know what the defensive calls were, but it looked like Garber was looking to pass it off and thinking there was one play where Nikendre Steiger at safety, it looked like Garber thought Steiger was going to pick him up coming across the field and just let him go, and then Garber's covering nobody. That happened multiple times, and yes, Keenan Garber is a young player when it comes to being in the secondary, but they've talked about this guy as an all Big 12 corner. And so I guess I could understand a couple of the mistakes happening with him, maybe once. Happening multiple times was hard to fathom. And then we've talked about this safety tandem or this trio of safeties and the depth there being among the best in the Big 12. And, what's Jordan Riley doing on the touchdown to Bauman, the tight end? I mean, Jordan, that's a good defensive executed play call and the scheme. Jordan Riley is there. He needs to go make a play on the ball. At worst, that ball can't be caught. At best, that ball needs to be picked off. And instead, it's a touchdown for Tulane to go ahead. There were just too many coverage busts out there. And, John, I was charting this. Tulane had 12 drives in the game, and they scored 34 points. It's 2.83 points per drive, which is a number you don't want to give up to a redshirt freshman quarterback, albeit he was way better than I expected. But 9 of their 12 drives, Curry Sexton made this observation to us in the first half. Their first 6 drives all got inside the K-State 40-yard line. And then in the second half, 3 of the 6 did. So 9 of their 12 drives, 75%, got inside the K-State 40-yard line in this game. I'll read it off to you to where they got ultimately in the drives. They got to K-State's 34, their 40, then touchdown. They got to the K-State 8-yard line, got sacked, had to settle for a field goal from 40 yards, so they fell back to the 22-yard line. They got to K-State's 20, lost a few yards, kicked a 40-yarder from the 23. Then to start the second half, they punt from their own 22, punt from their own 26. Then they get a touchdown. They get to the K-State 25. Then obviously they have the strip sack, and the K-State gets a turnover and a touchdown. They get to the Tulane 38, have to punt, and then they get to the K-State 2. The only saving grace for this defense was they got 2 turnovers that when they got down there. So, I mean, credit for making the play, but this left a lot to be desired from a defensive effort standpoint. And you got Arizona on the horizon, obviously, and Teteroa McMillan and what he can bring to the table. They've got a lot of things to correct. You love that you did it in a win. Ultimately, that's what matters. But this team has a lot of growing up to do on the defensive side of the football, which I didn't think we'd have to say, given this was supposed to be a team with top 15 returning production and be the veteran group out there.
Yeah, and that's the alarming part, because clearly the offense has a lot of growing up to do too, in terms of just consistency. Look, we'll talk about the offense plenty, and I think a lot of this with Avery Johnson is just simply that the expectations as we probably knew deep down we're built up a little bit too high, and he's just a bit inconsistent right now. Play calling a bit inconsistent. They were talking about, Kleiman said at halftime something about like receivers not getting lined up. Obviously, the offensive line had moments. So, but we expected that with the offense. The defense is supposed to be the thing that's kind of the glue holding everything together. And I don't know. Right now, it's a little tricky. I agree. Cole was on fire, charting all that during the game, and still finding a way to text us in the group chat that we had going with with a couple of our friends. So that's Cole. Cole is an awesome multitasker as far as that goes. I will say that Jordan Riley playing the end zone, that was another one of those. Look, I promise I won't spend the entire broadcast. I hate being the guy that's like, oh, the announcers suck. And I think Bob Wischusen and Louis Riddick are really good. But that was one of those moments. This is one where I'll admit it's a little bit of partisan in me. The touchdown pass that Mensah threw that you were talking about, where it looked like Jordan Riley, it just hung up there forever, and Jordan Riley could have intercepted it or at least batted it down. I was like, man, this is taking me back to like early Julius Brent's ball skills days, when it just felt like there were so many passes that would be thrown up there, and you're like, dude, you're there. Like, you're in position. Like, just make the play. Obviously, things turned out well for Julius Brent to turn into a second-round draft pick. But, yeah, that was one where they were on the broadcast really praising, like, man, what a great throw. And I was kind of like, I don't know that that was a great decision or great throw. He just got lucky that Jordan Riley was off. He didn't get a good jump. He just didn't seem to time it well or anything, and was a little bit flat-footed and whatever. There are a million of those plays. I guess we do need to also, Cole, give credit where it's due to the defense as well, because like I said, they did start to get some pressure. Joe Klannerman started to really dial things up. They got 5 sacks. They had the massive strip sack that turned into a touchdown for Jack Fabris running the other way. And it was Austin Romaine who got the strip. And he's somebody that, we've been, again, young guy who's probably having to play more than he should at this point, but we've been critical of him at times. He made a hell of a play, and that was a play that K-State absolutely had to win the game. I mean, I definitely don't think that they're winning the game without that play.
Yeah, no, I think that was the game-changing play. I mean, Tulane is about to take the lead. They're inside K-State's 25-yard line and about to respond right back once again with the K-State defense not able to get a stop. And then Romaine makes that strip, and initially I was just excited because it looked like they were going to get him for like a 15-yard sack and potentially chase him into like a 3rd and 28, 3rd and 30, and maybe knock him out of field goal range. And then for the ball to be stripped and then the scoop and score by Jack Fabris, obviously a huge play in the game. And then you get the defensive stop and force a punt, and you get the ball back with 5 minutes. And I'm thinking, okay, they got this. I was very disappointed with the play calls and the series of that 3 and out. It's way too conservative by Connor Riley and this coaching staff. Avery Johnson was playing very good football in the second half. Okay. Consider this stat line, John. At halftime, Avery Johnson was 8 of 15 passing for 62 yards, an average of 4.1 yards per pass. He finished the second half, in the second half alone, the final 2 quarters of the game, he goes 7 of 8 passing, 119 yards, 14.9 yards per pass attempt, was delivering dimes. Now, he made a couple mistakes early in that game, obviously. He got away with one that should have been picked off in the first half. Jaden Jackson was open. He had the pass to Sterling Lockett downfield that would have been a huge play that he overthrew. You need to hit on that. But in the second half, Avery Johnson made some huge plays. This K-State offense made some big plays. They scored 17 points on 3 drives in a 3-drive stretch, which was huge in the game. And the offense had been rolling. And for you to just line up and so predictably run the ball, and yes, I know you have one of the best running backs in the country in DJ Giddens, and you ran for 215 yards as a team in this game, and 6-7 yards per carry. But Tulane was selling out on the run, man. You got to give the kid a chance to at least do something. Get him on the edge. Let Avery have the run pass option at the very least on one of those plays. That was disappointing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. It drove me insane. It felt somebody said this is like very Andy Reid-esque, because I feel like that is where you're like, Andy Reid sometimes will do that. Just these really conservative series when you feel like, hey, you really need something a little bit more here. You need some, and even, okay, yes, I would have been in favor of, hey, get Dylan and DJ on the field at the same time there. Put a little bit more stress. If they know you're going to run, at least stress them out a little bit by having both of those guys there. You can maybe make it some kind of option play where, Avery can get on the run. It can even be like an RPO where you're telling him, hey, only throw the thing if it's wide open. But okay, beyond all that, you get to 3rd and long. Avery was making plays the entire day when he just got to get on the run a little bit, wait, and see how things suss out, and then make a nice throw on the run. Like, that's when he was at his best. And so it killed me that they just dropped off a little screen to DJ Giddens on that 3rd down play. Like, your best offense for a lot of the day was letting Avery create a little bit. So just send the receivers downfield. And if it's not there right away, just let him run around a little bit and make a play. That killed me. That killed me on that series.
I could live with it if your defense is playing like we expect the K-State defense to play. But the fact that they were getting torched all game, the offense needed to go kill that clock and get a couple of first downs. And, I get that, like, even when defenses sell out against the run, K-State's running attack, they believe in themselves and they think they can still get first downs. KU last year and Lawrence, they were selling out to stop the run, and K-State killed the clock by running the football with DJ Giddens. And, of course, you did have an All-American in Cooper Beebe and some really good offensive linemen. So look, at the end of the day, you win the game, but I think if I'm looking at this from an offensive standpoint, John, and I know we probably got to go to break in a minute, but I think there were some encouraging things, especially in the way they finished that game and some big plays.
Yes. Put a pin in that. Let's talk about that when we come back, because I kind of want that to be our top story here, because I think it's really easy to get buried in all this. There's a lot of discussion about Avery, and in the first half, people melting down and going into, Twitter fan mode, which, like, I understand. But twice now he has been able to regroup when it seems like things were going very poorly and play a really, really nice second half. But hey, look, I'm wearing my home field apparel. We're always wearing our home field apparel. It's game day. You should be wearing yours. Game day as we sit and record this here anyway. But you got like a week. I'm sure they could ship you some home field apparel gear from homefieldapparel.com for the game on Friday when K-State takes on Arizona. So go get it. 50 plus K-State designs, 100 plus other schools. Go to homefieldapparel.com, use promo code 3MOD24 and get 15% off your first order. That's promo code 3MOD24 at homefieldapparel.com for 15% off your first order. And we are back in just a moment.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
I really like to think we do a lot for you here, including that promo code to get you 15% off, but we also can give you a chance to win $500. Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. The survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and in turn help this show. That's bluewirepods.com/survey, where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Make sure to read the full terms and disclaimer, plus complete the survey for a chance to win. It is bluewirepods.com/survey. The link is also in the show notes of this episode. Yeah, so, I was seeing a lot of the Twitter reaction. And look, you're going to get a lot of opposing fans are kind of, they're watching Avery Johnson and how he plays because there has been a lot of hype for him, right? Not that we should have to explain everything like in Twitter terms, but so many of us live in that world. K-State fans have been very excited about this. National media has been very excited about Avery Johnson. So you're going to get people hating when they watch and they don't see a total superstar. I got my guy Carrington CDOT texted me and was like, K-State fans think Avery Johnson's Dylan Raiola, and he's just not. Now that text came in the first half. I would like to point out that Dylan Raiola was the consensus number 1 quarterback in the country, and Avery Johnson was number 10. So there is a bit of a difference there. But in fairness, like, people were picking him to win the Heisman this year. And even though I don't think any of us were, we still have hyped the guy up a lot. So with great hype and attention comes a responsibility to perform, or people are going to, start to come after you. So you're just going to get a lot of that. I think the reality here is he's a guy that can do some phenomenal things. He's very talented. You see it. I mean, the legs, he hasn't really shown it as much with his legs so far, but I mean, that touchdown that he threw in the first half in the back of the end zone was obscenely good. Like, there's so much upside there. It's crazy. But yes, right now, he does miss the Jaden Jackson throw, which should have been a huge play. He probably has a touchdown to Sterling Lockett that he just airmailed. He's doing that a lot on balls down the field. But in fairness, twice after really rough first halves where it feels like things are not going well at all, he's been able to rally and make huge plays. I mean, I know we were all nervous watching it happen, but the 4th and short wheel route to DJ Giddens for a touchdown is a great play and a ballsy play, I might add. When you're struggling and the offense isn't going well and you've got 4th and short and you really need this, and you sit there and wait a long time on that 4th down play when your offensive line has not been playing very well for DJ Giddens to clear the linebacker and get open, and you stick it right on the money on 4th down. That takes balls, dude. And he did that. And he hits Keegan Johnson down the field, right? That was a beautiful ball where Johnson had a little bit of separation on him. So he recovered and did a really nice job in the second half. You're just going to have to be a little patient. And I will, if we have to accept responsibility and say that we are a part of the Avery Johnson hype machine that maybe hyped him up a little bit too much at this stage in his career, then that is fine. But you can still see the talent there. You can still see a lot of the moxie there and poise there. All the traits are there for him to be a really great quarterback. It's just you're going to have some patience. I mean, think back to any great K-State quarterback in their career if they were playing when they were a sophomore. I mean, Colin Klein as a sophomore got on the field for really like one game with significant action that we remember, which was the Texas game. Like he was not a bona fide star at that point. L. Roberson as a sophomore was a disaster and was like splitting time with Mark Dunn. And it was really frustrating. The team went 6-6. Will Howard, as people were getting back into the Will Howard debate, which is just lovely today. And I'm like, do we remember what Will Howard looked like as a true sophomore? I mean, I know the expectations are high for him and we think Avery is going to be greater than Will Howard. And that's why K-State made the decision they did, but just a little bit of patience, patience. And we still see some really good things out of him.
I mean, that's the thing. You see the glimpses, like you see what he can be, and you just highlighted them all. The throw to Will Swanson, throwing across his body in the only spot you can really put the ball. Nice play by Will Swanson, by the way, who's not.
It was hell of a catch. Yes.
Will not being known necessarily for his pass catching, more of your blocking tight end. For him to make that play, he had a couple nice catches today. So credit to Will Swanson, but him making that play, the throw to DJ was an absolute dime. And DJ, obviously, he leads K-State with 4 catches for 63 yards. Just shows again how terrific of a player he is. 114 yards on the ground on 19 carries, almost to 2,000 yards in his career rushing the football. The throw to Keegan, really nice ball, 33-yard pass. It was great to see Keegan, get a play downfield, something that you wanted to see there. When you look at explosiveness in this game, just look at the second half. They have a 27 rush by Dylan Edwards, a 10-yard run by him. So 10-yard and plus runs on the ground count as explosives. A 45-yard touchdown pass to DJ, a 33-yard pass to Keegan, a Dylan Edwards 13-yard touchdown run, a DJ 10-yard run. I mean, they had some explosives in this game on the offensive end of the field, and ultimately Avery finishes 15 of 23 passing, 181 yards, and almost 8 yards a pass, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And yes, he did get away with no interceptions. I'm sorry. He did get away with an interception in the game, but you see those highlight moments. And let's keep in mind that they're going up against a John Summerall coach defense, who's known as one of the brightest defensive minds in college football. And Troy, the last 2 years with Summerall as the head coach, ranked 10th in the country in points per drive allowed. Both years were top 10 in a lot of the different defensive categories. Yards per carry, too. Troy's defense was terrific. Top 10 last year. Number 9 in the country, allowing 3.2 yards per pass. They were top 20 in pass efficiency D. Yards per pass allowed, top 15. I mean, the Troy defense has been terrific under Summerall. He's a defensive mind. So for Avery Johnson to put together that stretch in the second half that he did and the offense to make adjustments, and it's not only that, John, it's that, I mean, they had their backs against the wall a couple times. Like, you're down 20-10, and there's a lot of pressure on this offense, especially after you go 3 and out on the first drive to start the second half. And then you drive down the field, you get a field goal, and then you get the big plays and you get the touchdown. And then what happens? But Tulane goes right back down the field and scores a touchdown. And you're like, oh, can the offense answer again down 27-20? You're asking a lot. And what do? They go right back down the field and quickly, and they answer right back. And you got the big 4th down pass to DJ Giddens, like some clutch moments that we saw from Avery Johnson that a young quarterback might be intimidated in the moment. So yes, B-Cat, you are exactly right. I don't understand what they're doing with Dylan Edwards right now. And maybe that's another talking point, John, but he had 10 snaps on the offensive end in the opener, and he had to be under 10 in this game. He had 4 carries for 54 yards, 13.5 yards per carry, 1 catch for -2 yards. I think he was on the field for under 10 snaps. They have to get Dylan Edwards on the field more and in special teams. I don't get it.
Well, that's like when you're talking about like getting him in a rhythm. I mean, it blows my mind. They're using him on punt returns. They're not using him on kick returns. I mean, in today's day and age, like punt returns are barely a thing anymore. Ever since Les Miles stepped away from Kansas and stopped punting the ball to Phillip Brooks, nobody has been returning punts. Let him return kicks. You guys know from last year. I mean, I complained about Chili Davis and the special teams the entire year. Nate Katzer, like I want to believe, and Chris Tennant has been awesome. Shout out to Chris Tennant. He was nails again today. That's been great. But I love you, Jace Brown. Play receiver. Hurdle guys, but why is Jace Brown returning kicks instead of Dylan Edwards? He is now fumbled kickoff return 1 of the year. And then today he has like a 10-yard return where he's not reading the blocks at all. And then you wind up with a penalty on the play too. And there was another fair catch on a punt return where they're getting a holding penalty on a day when like the field position was killing them for a while in the first half. What the hell is going on there? And why not let Dylan Edwards be the one? He is by far your most dangerous returner. And if you're not going to use him as much on offense and you want him to get going and get in the flow of the game, that just seems like such an easy like layup gimme to have Dylan Edwards be doing that. And Jace Brown has just not displayed having it when it comes to that. He's really fast. I mean, he's pretty fast. He's a great route runner. I think that's how he creates a lot of his separation on the offensive side of the ball. But like Dylan Edwards is like legitimately one of the fastest players in college football. I like use him that way. It is beyond me. And you're right. Today, when he came in offensively, suddenly things started clicking, man. He provided juice. Like each of the first 2 games when the offense has like needed a spark, they've needed something. Dylan Edwards has given him that twice. And yeah, they just don't seem to want to use him. I'm sure, Cole, they would probably tell us that some of it is he got in late, right? He wasn't there for spring ball. He's still getting acclimated and they don't want to put too much on his plate. I'm sure that would be the answer. But like, I don't know. At some point, I feel like you got to just say, hey, whatever limited package it is that we're using with him, we need to use it twice as much as we're using it in the game right now, whatever that is going to be, because he's been that good when he gets in there.
Well, that's the thing. I don't like this coaching staff talked all offseason about getting the best playmakers on the field. Did they not? It wasn't so much like they talked about it at wide receiver. Like we got to rotate more wide receivers. We got to get the talent on the field. Even if they don't understand 100% of the playbook, they got to be on the field, at least for a certain package. And Dylan Edwards is one of your most talented players. So you have to get him on the field more than 10 snaps. And there were a couple plays today, John, where I'm like, oh, there's nothing there. And Dylan Edwards popped through. And these were on plays running up the middle.
He was running well between the tackles today.
Yeah. Yeah, he ducked down, like he hid, kind of slithered behind the offensive line and made a couple of really nice plays. They haven't really gotten him going at all in the passing game. Like I fully expected them to start getting him motioned out and getting him on some crossing routes. And maybe that's to come. But in a game like today, when your backs are against the wall and it looked like you might lose, like you thought we would have seen them pull out some different stops. Like I guess I just expected to see him on the field more with DJ Giddens at the same time, simultaneously in split back sets, et cetera. And then you had the stretch where, yes, we know they really like Joe Jackson, and I'm not going to complain about Joe Jackson getting a touchdown that got taken away. That was a really nice play by Joe Jackson out of the backfield, and I think he's a talented kid. But then you got Joe Jackson coming on the field, and he's in at running back, and you're like, well, what's going on here? Like, are they going to get Dylan more involved? And that was in the first half. I don't know. I think they got to figure out some things there, make some adjustments. Hopefully we see it soon. But that was a disappointing part to me that they didn't get him on the field more today.
Very, very ticky-tack illegal man downfield call too on that Joe Jackson touchdown.
I hate that call. Maybe it's because we got used to seeing K-State, as you pointed out in our group text, like 5-6 yards downfield in the past. But Carver Willis was maybe 2 yards downfield, John. And not only that, he kind of got like pushed, like he kind of got off
Yeah.
balance and like kind of shoved downfield, and it has no impact on the play. The only reason the official saw it is because he stands out like a sore thumb out there in the middle there where nobody was around him. Has no impact on the play, and it's very ticky-tack. I hated it. So that was disappointing. It was a bad day for special teams. I mean, Chris Tennant makes the 40-plus yarder. That was great. I don't think anyone can get on him for missing the 50-plus yarder that came up shorter. I mean, I was frustrated in case they didn't try to run another play. I think we all were with the timeout.
Can we talk about that? Because there were a couple things. I mean, Kleiman also wasn't using timeouts there as Tulane was trying to score. I mean, that's another thing you could say. More modern thinking coach would potentially be using timeouts there to try and save yourself some time to get Avery the ball back. I digress. But yes, I thought with 6 seconds left, I know the clock did tick an extra second to go down to 6 seconds left, and you have a timeout. Like, you could literally just hand the ball off to DJ Giddens and say, fall down after 5 yards if you get that. I mean, I guess their concern is running play. It could get strung out and DJ's not I'm sure that's what their concern is, but it felt like, dude, just do something quick there. You can literally call the timeout. An extra 5 to 7 yards would have helped out a lot, as we saw in the field goal. But that's never really been Kleiman's strong suit as a coach, is anything related to game management like that. So kind of is what it is.
Yeah. And, the special teams, they had a 30-something yard punt that set Tulane up inside the K-State 40-yard line. Wasn't a good kick. You had a couple penalties. You already outlined it on a kick return and then a punt return, where the punt return one was particularly frustrating because you fair catch the ball and K-State kind of went for the punt block. So they weren't even really setting up to run, a punt return, and nobody really got a hand on anybody anyways. Like, Tulane got right down the field. So you get a hold there. Just a frustrating day for special teams. And then the one good play that you think you get, they punched the ball out. And look, that was very close. I thought it was a fumble. I still think it was. I can live with them letting it stand. What I can't live with, to your point earlier, is Bob Wischusen and Louis Riddick just completely dismissing it. Like, oh yeah, move on. Why are we even looking at this? Clearly down. No, he definitely wasn't. Pretty sure the ball was punched out before the forearm was down. You guys need to, watch the play.
That's one of those where I think obviously it's impossible because there are too many bodies around, but I think if you didn't have bodies around and you could just watch like a clear head-on view, I think it would show that the ball was punched out before his forearm was down. But there's so much traffic there that I understand why they can't make that call. And I also understand why they wouldn't see it live. So it was not, I was not like losing my mind over that, but the dismissal that they had with that. And then like, man, well, this is taking so long. I guess they're just really making sure here. It's like, hey guys, maybe go back. And then they did go back and look at it again. And they were maybe not quite as dismissive, but still pretty damn dismissive. And then the thing, I mean, this is going to draw a lot of reaction from people at the end of the game. And this just kills me because Louis Riddick, he is a guy that a lot of people really respect his football acumen, and I understand why. I think he's pretty good. I really like Bob Wischusen. I mean, look, as a guy who poured my heart and soul into play-by-play for a really long time, I like to pay attention a lot to that stuff. I think Wischusen is very good, but the offensive pass interference thing at the end of the game, I mean, there was 0 attempt to run a route there at all. And people are like, well, they just got locked up. Yeah, by design. Like, that's the play. It's a pick play. That's what you're trying to do. Every time you see someone run a pick play and the guy gets tangled up with the defensive back like that, it is getting called. Like, I would have been surprised if they raised really any questions about it. And instead, they completely Louis Riddick is just out here like, oh man, I mean, that's just awful. Like, that's terrible. There's no way. Like, what the hell are you guys talking about? There's no attempt to run a route. He runs into him and just kind of sticks out his forearm to keep blocking. Was it Jacob Parrish? To keep blocking Parrish from getting through there. There was no attempt to run a route. On the pick play, you got to attempt to run a route. And the idea is that you kind of clip them a little bit. Like, they did that on the play in the corner to Jordan Riley was kind of like that. And they did it successfully, where it was like actually just like running a route and you sort of get in the way. You can't just run in to the fucking defensive back. Like, I don't understand. I truly don't understand what was going on there with Bob Wischusen and Louis Riddick. And it's frustrating because then they empower the Twitter warriors who are all going to come in and, what a bailout, terrible call. And, you got Stuart Mandel out there with multiple tweets about how it's the worst call that he's ever seen to end a game. And come on, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I were a Tulane fan, I'd probably be a little more upset by a true 50-50 call on the next play not going their way. That's not one I'm going to say is definitively PI on K-State, but I think that's a 50-50 call that could go either way for sure. But the offensive pass interference was like textbook. That is textbook. When the Big 12 head of officiating comes and talks to the media at Big 12 media days, that's something they would put on the tape to be like, hey, we're looking out for pick plays here. This is what happens. So they can stick that, where, because that was absolutely offensive pass interference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're right. What happened was a guy like Riddick, who's very well respected, and I respect Louis Riddick, but I didn't think he had a good call today. And him being so dismissive of that call and critical of it, you've got people that don't really like Stuart Mandel, who really don't understand football, like what they're seeing, that say, oh, that Louis Riddick said that. Like, I got to hop on that too. That's an awful call. I mean, somebody else in our, chat in here submitted a comment earlier, John. I mean, Tulane got away with a pick play on that touchdown catch to Bauman, the tight end, on the play that Jordan Riley should have, made a play on. And there was a pick play there set, and they got away with it. And I mean, like you and I talked off air, if I'm yes, the play worked for a touchdown, but they got a penalty. Like, if I'm a Tulane fan, I'm like, why aren't we running the ball there at the 1.5 yard line with 30 seconds and multiple timeouts? Like, why would you put yourself in a situation to risk a pick play there from 1.5 yards out with 4 downs and plenty of time to get that? That's the thing I'd be frustrated with. And so, I get it. Like, I would understand why Tulane fans are upset, but at the end of the day, it's the right call. So yeah, I don't think I'm critical of that one. Obviously, it went in our favor. So,
well, I mean, yes. We were talking about that before we hopped on here. I was just like, as a K-State fan, I'm sitting there thinking, all right, well, they're obviously going to score this. I'm guessing they're probably going to go for 2. So you basically have back-to-back plays here that are going to be from about the same spot. And I'm thinking Tulane could score this any number of ways. I mean, I had very similar, honestly, to the ending of the Chiefs game the other night, where you're like, I mean, the defense seems gassed. This feels like in no way are they going to be able to stop this here. Like, I would not have felt confident about the Chiefs stopping a 2-point conversion. So do anything but the play it's very easy for, even if the receiver's not totally trying to do that, it's very easy to kind of stumble into something and get an offensive pass interference call there. So yeah, like, put some of that on Summerall for running that play right there. They could have done anything to score on the K-State defense from like 1.5 yards. There was like 27 seconds left. They had timeouts, right? I mean, you literally have everything at your disposal, and you try and run a pick play. And oh, by the way, if they don't call it, it's not a touchdown. It's going to go back to like the 6-inch line. He was not in the end zone, I don't think. So, whatever. They're probably scoring the next play. Again, I don't have confidence that K-State's stopping them, but that whole thing was just ridiculous. Am I able to share my screen? Does it allow me to do that? Let me see here real quick.
Well, and while you're trying to do that, John, I mean, not only that, but Mekhi Hughes, you got a running back that's ran for nearly 1,400 yards last year, and he had 128 yards on 21 carries today, averaged 6.1 yards per carry against the K-State defense. So, I mean, I would probably just have given the ball to Mekhi Hughes. One thing while you're still working on that, I would just say that.
Are you guys seeing it? Are you seeing my screen?
I'm not. I think Nick might have to.
Okay.
Share.
So here you go. So, I mean, you can just watch it over and over again. Watch the receiver. Watch number 1 here. I mean, tell me where there's an attempt to run a route.
This is where we need a telestrator for you too, John.
And he just sticks out his arm and drives Jacob Parrish back into the end zone. Like, that's getting called 10 times out of 10. I don't understand the controversy over that. Do not understand.
Yeah, and it's not like the pass is behind the line of scrimmage, right? So you can't make the yard. It's downfield, so it's OPI. Anyways, K-State, look, there's no doubt, like, K-State, it was the right call. K-State got a break. I mean, they were going to probably let him score, and
let's be clear, they got a break from John Summerall, who generally coached a very good game, but he gave K-State one by running that inexplicably instead of something that would have been much more high percentage.
And in college, it's a 15-yard penalty, and in the NFL, it's only 10 when it's on the offense. So it makes it even harder. And then, you get in a situation where VJ Payne makes an interception to end the game. And it was really, I was sitting there. It took 7 quarters for K-State to force a turnover on the season. K-State's been top 15 in the country in turnovers forced each of the last 2 years, and they've been tops in the Big 12 2 straight years in turnover margin. And it took them 7 quarters to get there, but lo and behold, they forced 2 turnovers that ultimately decide the game, and made some plays. Austin Romaine finished with 2 sacks. I just pulled up the final box score: 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, 8 tackles. Jordan Riley co-led the team with Romaine with 8 tackles. VJ Payne had a tackle for loss. I was shocked by this, John. K-State had 11 tackles for loss, just like they did in the opener. Now, they had the 5 sacks. I'll be honest with you, I didn't feel like K-State was getting a good pass rush, and maybe it was because they were having to blitz a ton, and it just didn't feel like they were getting home a lot of times. And that's a Tulane offensive line that has 143 combined starts between them and ranked, 10th most in the country in terms of combined starts in all of college football. I thought they played a nice game up front. I didn't feel like K-State was getting in the backfield all that much, but maybe that was just with the organic pass rush of the 3-down, 4-down look. They weren't getting there. They weren't getting home much of the game. I was surprised that they ended up with 11 TFLs. And I will say, Tulane doesn't end up with a single sack on their end on defense. Avery wasn't sacked. There were a couple times that were close. Obviously, he's tough to sack with his mobility. And Tulane only has 3 tackles for loss in the game. So that's a good thing as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. It didn't feel like the pass rush was very consistent, but it did feel like they hit that stretch in the second half where, kind of up until the last drive or maybe last 2 drives, they started to get home more. They were definitely getting more pressure. And a lot of that was just because, Klanderman was bringing a lot of heat. He was bringing a lot of heat, and that obviously really, really paid off. I'll say one more thing here real quick. I was going to tack this on to the end of the discussion about the OPI and all that at the end with the broadcast crew, because again, I know people, you're the K-State fans. Of course, you're going to say it was offensive pass interference and all that. Look, I am not. I saw people. They, Wischusen and Riddick really wanted Tulane to win. It's so obvious. Guys, no, that's not it. Did you notice how Avery Johnson played a pretty poor first half, and they were still just trying to will Avery Johnson back into the game. They were trying to will him back into the game and giving him a lot of grace. And you know why they're doing that? It's because they want the broadcast to be as compelling as possible, because they want as compelling a game as possible. So they don't want to see a game end on a penalty, in essence. They want as much drama at the end of the game as possible. They're rooting for the best broadcast. So let's not go crazy over the line and be like, they just wanted Tulane to win. No, that's where you're being Homer guy. But they definitely want the most compelling, dramatic possible game because they want viewers on the game. And I can tell you this, just as a play-by-play guy, it sucks when you get a dud of a game. You want people watching what you're doing, and you want to get good tape out of it, to use. I guess Wischusen's at a point where it probably doesn't really matter what his tape is, but you want the most compelling game. That's the motivation for a broadcaster. So anyway, all right, we've got to get to our friends at Elenco, who bring you the top storyline on the show. If you have any home improvement needs, this is who to call. Elenco, locally based company out of KC, owned by awesome K-Staters who support us here on the pod. I want to nail down on this a little bit, Cole, because I would say, it's probably been 60-40 negative maybe here coming out of it with a win. They did find a way to get a win. And this definitely felt like a loss for much of the day. And there was a ton going wrong. And Chris Kleiman said at the end of the game when he did his sideline interview, this was a win this was a game that our culture won. He said our culture won this game. So how much stock do you put into that, and how, I guess, happy should we be coming out of this game for the mere fact that they found a way to pull it out when even the Big 12 championship team a couple of years ago, Facing a really good Tulane team, but that game was in Manhattan, they couldn't do that. They didn't have the second gear. Adrian Martinez did not have the second half that Avery Johnson did today when they ran into that a couple of years ago. They had a dud, and they found a way to win.
Yeah, I think that's the encouraging thing, John. We talked about the duds before, right? And this probably felt like that throughout the game. And as frustrating as it was, this time they found a way to come out on top and make the plays that you had to make. When the offense had its back against the wall, they came out and made some plays. Avery Johnson delivered some strikes. They had some explosives in the running game. When the defense had its backs against the wall, they forced a couple turnovers down the stretch that changed the tenor of that game. And so you're encouraged by that. And look, this was a tricky spot. Like K-State ended up closing around 8.5, 9-point favorites. They win the game by 7. It's a road game. I know it's not that daunting of an atmosphere, but you have to keep this in mind. Over the last few years, that Tulane football program, and it's a different coach, but it's a coach in John Summerall that went 23-4 each of the last 2 years at Troy and won back-to-back Sun Belt titles. The 41-year-old is a hell of a coach, right? And so he comes in and he puts his mark on this program and a winning culture. Willie Fritz is gone, but that Tulane program went to Norman, Oklahoma in 2021, lost 40-35 in the opener. They lost by 5 points, right? They come to Manhattan and they win in 2022. They beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. Last year, they have Ole Miss on the ropes, up 7 at halftime in Tulane. And they were within 3 with like 6 minutes left in the game. And if it wasn't for the fact that they were playing with their backup quarterback, Kai Horton, who is now their starting number 3 quarterback on their depth chart on the current Tulane roster, they were within an eyelash of winning that game. Don't look at the final stats and the box score of a 37-20 finish in that game. With 6 minutes left, it was a 3-point game, and Tulane had the football. The score got out of hand late out of desperation. That Ole Miss team won 11 games. So at the end of the day, you avoid the dud in terms of the loss. You keep the momentum going. You keep the energy level high going into a huge matchup on Friday night in Manhattan against Arizona. How much would it have sucked to come into that game with the loss? Now you've got 2 teams, assuming Arizona wins today on Saturday, coming in ranked in the top 20 on national Fox. A ton of excitement, a ton of hype. And I think you'll learn something. You'd rather learn and from mistakes and a win than a loss. Frank Martin always said that. You don't have to lose to learn things. You can win and figure out a way to learn and capitalize on that. And I guarantee you that Chris Kleiman and Joe Klanderman are going to be in the film room working the hell out of that secondary and correcting the mistakes that occurred on Saturday, because this was just not a K-State defense and secondary that we're used to seeing. I mentioned it already. Last year, K-State allowed a 55% completion percentage defensively. It was the best in 15 plus years by a K-State secondary. They were top 10 in the country in completion percentage allowed last year. They were top 15 in yards per pass allowed last season. They were 14th in pass efficiency defense, and most of that secondary is back. So I expect them to figure it out and make some corrections. And I think you can be encouraged that Avery Johnson and that offense showed some things in the second half, and they will continue to get better with more and more repetition. And now you're 2-0 and you move onward and you figure out a way to get better.
I'm watching the halftime report right now on CBS of Iowa State, Iowa, and they just showed a nice highlight of the K-State Tulane game. I'm impressed. 0 mention of the pass interference play there. We got the VJ Payne interception, and we got the Jack Fabris scoop and score. So, too bad. Tough one for Bob Susan and Luke Riddick.
Can I also say, John, like I underestimated this Tulane roster. I think a lot of us did. Like, yes, K-State did not play well, and they left some easy throws, but I went off the recruiting profile of Darian Mensa and being a redshirt freshman quarterback. This is a guy that was the number 2013 ranked player in the On3 industry consensus rankings in the 2023 recruiting class and the 113th ranked quarterback. But then the more that you read about him, like there's a reason he all of a sudden just overtook Ty Thompson, the former 5-star quarterback from Oregon that transferred in and got the job late. And then the articles I started reading this past week, like they just rave about his poise and his composure and how he doesn't play like a redshirt freshman quarterback and his leadership intangibles. And I got to tell you, that kid can throw the heck out of the football. LSU's probably on line 1 tampering with him right now in the portal. They're going to be looking to pull him out of Tulane. But what I will say, just to get to that point, like this is a Tulane team that looks like every bit the team that could win 9-10 games this year and, contend for a playoff spot as that group of 5 team. I mean, they got some talent, man. Mario Williams at wide receiver. Yeah. People forget Mario Williams is a former 5-star wide receiver that put up 600 yards receiving at USC one year, and he was at Oklahoma before that. Dante Fleming wasn't a guy that I expected huge things from today, and he had a big game for them. They brought in some other, 5-star, 4-star type pedigree recruits at running back. They got an experienced offensive line, and they got a running back that had 1,400 yards almost last season. So they have some talent, and they brought in a bright defensive mind as their head coach, and they got some defensive pieces to work with. So at the end of the day, this could You know, we look back in 2022, right? We're like, well, Tulane wasn't really that bad of a loss. They won the Cotton Bowl and won 11, 12 games, right? Like, we could look back on this and be like, that's a hell of a win. Winning on the road at Tulane at a 10-win team, maybe. I mean, they could challenge and win the American for sure.
Yeah. They didn't even have, is it Shabazz Preston, the kid from Alabama?
Shaz Preston. He's banged up. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't even play today. That's an former Alabama receiver that K-State went after in the portal that chose to go to Tulane. He didn't even play. So, yeah, I mean, they've got some dudes. If I had to bet right now, I would imagine that Mensa, and I guess maybe I shouldn't take this shot at Tulane, but I have my doubts that Mensa is going to finish his career with Tulane based on what we saw today. We'll see how that plays out for the rest of him. Arizona, I believe, plays Northern Arizona today. So I imagine that they are going to win. We're going to get the top 20 showdown on Friday, which will be awesome. So already seeing promos running for that today, which is great. And by the way, it's on Fox, right? So Fox, yeah. Big Fox definitely got what they wanted with K-State winning the game. My concern, obviously, is Tetaroa McMillan going for 400 yards receiving because, he put up 300 plus and 4 touchdowns in their opener. So that's going to be a concern. Their offense is really good. Now, their defense was not very good. They gave up 39 points and a ton of yards to New Mexico. So, could be in for a shootout. On Friday. And to be honest with you, I don't love K-State's chances at all in a shootout.
Yeah, the offense will certainly need to continue to improve and play better. I prefer to avoid a shootout. I think we thought the defense was going to be the key to winning some of these first few games of the season. And today, that's the one discouraging thing. But you got to hope that the coaching staff will get it corrected because there's talent on this defense. And, there is some inexperience on the defensive line, rotating a lot of these guys at D end, and Austin Romaine still young at middle linebacker. But yeah, you got to hope that they grow up fast. Something tells me, in basketball where you just face guard the other team's best player, I don't want to see any passing off Tetaroa McMillan like today where you're oh, you hope the other guy communicates. You got to you put Jacob Parrish, you follow him around with Tetaroa McMillan or Marquise Siegel, and then you have safety help over the top at all times. You got 4 eyes on that guy. You got 2 bodies keying in on him. Now, the problem is Noah Fafita is a hell of a quarterback, and they've got other weapons as well. But McMillan, you cannot let beat you. 304 yards, 10 receptions in the opener, the highest ranked recruit in Arizona school history, top 35 player. There's mock drafts that have him ranked, to go ahead of Luther Burden in the draft as the number 1 receiver taken. He's expected to be a top 5 pick, and he's a 6'5" physical monster. So it'll be a true test for this K-State secondary and the defense. But you're at home, and it's good to get back home with a road win under your belt and build on that. And that'll only help them. I know, again, it's not a daunting atmosphere, but going on the road and winning a game will help them as they go into farther, more intimidating environments as the season goes on, with BYU in week 4, which won't be easy, and then Colorado after that.
Yeah, the problem with I'm with you. Hey, Jacob Parrish, just go follow him. The problem is Jacob Parrish is going to give up 4 or 5 inches there, potentially. I don't. What do they list Parrish at? Is he 6 foot?
That's the problem. Honestly, they don't have a Will Lee or Julius Brents this year, right? So you don't have a 6'2", 6'3" corner with that length. Now Jacob Parrish has longer arms than I think a lot of people would expect, so he's got some length to him. Marquise Siegel might be your longest guy, and he's a guy that's played some corner in his career, but you might be better off having him still play safety and shadowing that end of the field. Now, K-State also, as DY often points out, doesn't typically have their corner match up throughout the game. They just keep their sides of the field and play it. I don't know what the game plan will be. We'll hear from Chris Kleiman on Monday, and eager to get Curry Sexton's thoughts this week when we record our wrap-up show and see what he thinks of the game. We were texting with him some during the game today, so be on the lookout for the show on Monday of this week. That'll come out with Curry Sexton as we assess the game and figure out who we got to interview for the player on this next week's show. For the player interview brought to you by Riverbank Brewing and Wildcat NIL that we have on weekly throughout the season. So if you're new and watching us for the first time, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to Apple, Spotify, or anywhere where you're listening. John, who should we have on as a player interview? You got an idea for this week?
I don't know. Fabris, Romaine.
Maybe we haven't had Romaine on before, so maybe we would. Maybe we do that. We'll figure that out.
You don't think I'm going to let you go without talking about what a gritty win by Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State Cowboys to come back from the dead at home against Arkansas to win that thing. Man, what a game, dude. Alan Bowman made an incredible throw to get them down into for a crucial late field goal in the game, and then got a 15-yard penalty for shooting finger guns at the sideline.
Immature. That's that Mike Gundy culture, Okay, yeah. I mean, don't think I wasn't keeping you in mind when I was watching the score ticker on the bottom and seeing Oklahoma State down 21-7 and seeing them struggle and double overtime. It's everything I thought Oklahoma State was this year, but I'm not in a position to talk after today's game against Tulane necessarily. K-State comes out on top.
Well, so here's the thing, Cole. I was about to say what we learned today probably, and I mean, again, all the things you said about K-State, hey, it's great they came out with a win, but I was about to say, I mean, Utah is just punishing Baylor, crushing Baylor. It was like 23-0, I think, at halftime. I'm about to say, Utah, clearly the class of the league, but Cam Rising got hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting to monitor. Now, it doesn't sound like it's a lower leg injury, which he's suffered multiple knee injuries, right? Yeah, it's a hand, so that's probably encouraging if you're a Utah fan depends if it's his throwing hand. But I would say this, John, just for perspective, and look, I'm glad Oklahoma State won the game. It's against an SEC opponent. I want the Big 12 to do well, except for Iowa State. I'm enjoying them losing to Iowa. That was my 3-wall lock of the week. So it's kind of funny to watch that go down again. But what I would say for perspective for K-State fans, you guys see Bowling Green today against Penn State? After all the talk about Penn State, we're talking here about K-State, winning a game by 7 on the road. Penn State was at home coming off a blowout win over West Virginia, and they were trailing to Bowling Green in the fourth quarter, a MAC school, and they end up winning 34-27. You know who's losing right now in the third quarter? Northern Illinois is beating Notre Dame 13-7. Okay. Oklahoma State had to go to double overtime against an Arkansas team that didn't even make a bowl last year, and it was in Stillwater. So, I just think it's important. Oregon last week beats Idaho 24-14. Idaho's first season, I believe, transitioning to the FBS. It's college football, man. There's a lot of parity, and there's a lot of crazy things that happen. And so anytime you get a win, you're happy. And, there's a lot of teams that would be thrilled to get out of that game like that with a win. So I'm not happy with some of the things I saw for sure. I'm not trying to make it a moral victory type thing. They got to get a lot of things corrected. There were some alarm bells going off in my head as I'm watching today's game, but you just got to trust and hope that Chris Kleiman, Joe Klanderman, and that defense can figure it out, and the offense continues to grow and get better each week.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a moral victory. It was a victory.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I mean,
I'm not trying to paint a complete rosy picture. I mean, we talked. If people tuned in midway through the show, I mean, I think we hammered the defense pretty hard in that first 10 to 15 minutes when we talked about. 491 yards of total offense and 7.4 yards per play, and 34 points on 12 drives, 2.83 points per drive. Those are numbers you can't have, and the explosives were far too much today by the K-State defense. 9 plays of 20 yards or more allowed. So they got to clean it up for sure.
My apologies to the Baylor Bears. They scored 3 points in the first half. So
you disrespectful.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dave Aranda. That's my bad, man. All right. Well, any other final thoughts before we wrap it up here?
I apologize that DY couldn't have jumped on, but we'll get DY on some of these post-game shows.
Let me check real quick see if he tweeted anything from the press conference. Have you seen any quotes or anything?
No, I'm practicing my be here now with you and John.
Derek said, Chris Kleiman said the TD pass to DJ Giddens on 4th down was actually a bubble that was defended well. Giddens and Avery Johnson both just improvised and made a play.
Okay.
That really seems like right now. Well, yeah, right now, I mean, the traditional just sit back in the pocket stuff doesn't seem to work quite as well for Avery right now, but you just get him being creative and making plays. That stuff seems to go pretty well.
Yep. And he is 3-0 as a starter now. So
yeah,
it's good. So
that's not bad. All right. I was trying to see if any of the other guys actually
DY only tweeted once. He's got to step it up.
I'm not seeing much. Did Kellis go? It looked like he was tweeting a TV screen. I don't see any.
You know what? Kellis hasn't tweeted from the post game either. So, I also wonder if, post game took a little longer to get wrapped up. So
I do. Didn't he say? Did he say something was like at a baseball stadium? Maybe that was a pregame meal. I can't remember.
He said their postgame was just outside.
Oh, that's what it was.
KU does postgame outside when we get K-State on the road, as you know. So yeah, kind of unorthodox, but it's the life of the media, man.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate Nick making all this happen behind the scenes. Thanks to all of our great sponsors. By the way, I botched the rest of the Alinco read, so let me make sure that we shout out our friends at Alinco for all your home improvement needs. Locally owned since 1986, based out of Kansas City, owned by K-Staters. If you need new windows or a bathroom remodel, they have premium window replacements and Kohler Luxstone shower systems. They can do new siding on your home, and you don't need to be in Kansas City or Manhattan. They'll go to Western Missouri, Northeast Kansas, the entire KC Metro. Go to alencohome.com. That's ALENCO home.com, ALENCO home.com to check out their services, including free estimates. They are great cats, man. I tell you what, like, they love the cats. That's why they're sponsoring this show. Call Sam at 913-961-2165 and support some great K-Staters who support us here on the show. Home field, holiday. We appreciate everybody who helps bring this show to you. And yes, for unfortunately no Derek Young on the show here tonight, but for DY and Cole, I am John. Thanks for listening to another edition of 3 Ma. We will talk to you soon.